G'day friends and fans, and welcome to Dave Talk Stuff Ukraine War Update for the 15th of October. We're at the pivotal point of the war. Russia has made steady gains. Ukraine's defences are slowly crumbling. There's political panic, reshuffling of deck chairs, finger pointing, desperate plea for assistance. But Ukraine's winning, right? Now, of course, you never know what tomorrow brings. I remember for history, the Battle of the Somme, the French military strike. Of course, the Germans feeling they could have, if only, with the million men from the Eastern Front, they didn't have to put down the riots. But it's always the if only. If only I had Tomahawks. If I only had Abrams. If I only had F-16s. How many if-onlys we've heard in this war? Right? How many times has Zelensky says, if only I had this, I would be in Moscow tomorrow, I think we've heard that somewhere before. If only I had Tiger Force. Then it's, if I only had Spitfires. Get that man shot. But it was true, by the way. A German, asked what he needed to win the war. A squadron of Spitfires. That's a real story. But Air Marshals, for all their planning, for all their mathematics of war, something you cannot take into consideration. Incompetence. Right? You can have the biggest army in the world, but if you're incompetent, you're never going to win. If the army isn't fighting to win, those stirring speeches are going to make them aim at the enemy. They're going to try and sit comfortable in their bunkers and ride out the war. Now, I thought mass surrenders would occur. It didn't. I was wrong about that. It's only a trickle. No mass surrenders materialized yet. It seems, I think one of the reasons is the fear of being traded back. That they'd rather die on the battlefield than, I suppose, be traded back and face the bleak existence that is now Ukraine. There's no polite term for a Ukrainian woman. That's a fact. There is those who aren't, shall we say, being stunning and brave on the street corners, don't want anything to do with the rest. Just wrapped up in whatever fantasy land. This is what happens as society crumbles. We keep electing the worst people to political office. Sorry, Europe has. I suppose that's why people get so. That's why good leaders are so rare. Because people can't tell. We haven't built our systems. We've eroded them. We think, he can't, Oh, Biden, he got all these hostages freed. But why are these really hostages? But inconsequential. He bought them off, Wasn't a great negotiator. It's always they're always in a race to swing their dick and show off and beat their chest. But overall, nobody remembers the hostages Biden freed. Nobody remembers it. Biden never attempted to stop the Ukraine war. Actually, Biden was one of the architects of the Ukraine war. Back when he was Barry's footstool. Before I continue, I'm your host, the author David Applegate, author of the books Boyhood Arcade, Pearl Games, Into the Ozbound, and the Rug Tales from the Empire. Part 1 out now, Part 2 coming soon. I have beta readers. I finished editing today. Hopefully beta readers will come through it and say, you actually this time got all the errors on the first pass. And I'm going to say, no, this is actually the 10th, but you know, potatoes, tomatoes. But anyway, I really need your help. If you like the support channel, check out the links in the link tree or the description below. Let's look at what's going on in Ukraine. Every time, every day that something blows up, they won't show you what blew up. Why did Russia hit a car in the streets? What's that off of smoking in the distance? Normally a picture shows 1,000 words. This one all has question marks. Where, when, why? Russian strikes on the front line. We know the only people on the front line with cars is the military. We know they hide behind civilian buildings. We know there's been lots of fighting. We know Russia has glide bombed the front line. We know the Ukraine cries that it's the victim. Russia has 2 million military reservists. They're considering full-scale deployment. We are reaching the end if we do. Everybody is posturing right now. But Zelensky is the only one who could end this. Or ending Zelensky might end this. If I was one of the two contenders for the president, and I was thinking, you know what? Zelensky is a third of the vote. This guy's a third of the vote. I have less than a third of the vote. This guy's going to kill me if he gets in. This guy's going to kill me if he stays in. I'll kill this guy, make a deal with this guy, and go back to England and be the ambassador. Let him have it. And of course, the reality is, no. Maybe you should kill both and then step aside and say, no. Because Ukraine just keeps having, time and time again, the worst people in government. UK has delivered 85,000 military drones. So much for brave and strong Ukraine standing up on their own. 85,000 drones, and Russia's advancing. King Zelensky has signed a decree to remove, remove the mayor of Odessa, revoke the citizenship of the mayor. He's removed the citizenship of the head of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. He's revoked people's citizenship. King Zelensky. Everything they accuse Donald Trump of is actually what Zelensky is doing. Every accusation by a liberal is a confession. Each and every time. It's like septum ring. Septum ring on the nose, septic tank for a mind. Each and every time. Zelensky has proven himself to be a loser, a horrid, manipulative loser. He is weak. 85,000 drones just from Ukraine, UK. That's why pensions in the UK go without heating. Food inspections. Waiting lists grow longer. Lack of training. Kids aren't getting trained because of diversity. So kids who could have become doctors can't because they're white males. So there's a doctor shortage. And society keeps going. And because they don't become doctors or even get married and don't have kids, the population goes into decline. All because Keir Starmer wants a pat on the back from Zelensky. But they're bum chuddies. You know that. They're both Jews. I mean, both atheists. I'm sorry, they're both Satanists. Now we see a little bit of expansion of the Russians. Buffer zone in Sumy. Russia has struck several positions in Sumy, cutting power. Now, continued fighting on the... they've been sitting here for a while, but the Russians have taken more blocks in Voknest. I'll probably pronounce them all wrong. As Russia's expanded, and not by much, it's actually only a little bit over here, the buffer zone, although it expanded a little bit yesterday, mass evacuations in and around this area have been ordered by Ukraine as the Russian army has broken through another defensive line in Kupiansk, though they've come down along the canal. They're actually fighting over the crossing. They've crossed the bridge, sorry. They're fighting over the crossing and fighting for the last little bit here in the corner. But the road allegedly is littered with dead vehicles. It has come down to street fighting between various machine gunners and the Russians are clearing houses by hitting them with recoilless guns and slowly advancing in Kupiansk. They probably may finish up by morning, who knows, but they may hold. Ukraine may hold out, but it looks like... Sorry, I got ahead of myself. There's panic. That's all I'm saying right now. I'll get to this story next. But there is panic over the fact that the Russians smashed another Ukrainian defensive line, that it's come out now leaking over 85,000 drones, most of them used to fire into Russia. And for what? What have they achieved? Nothing. They've not made a dent in the war. They've made no significant change. Why are they panicking? Because UK has just spent billions, not millions, billions on these drones, okay? Thousands of drones airlifted to Ukraine to fly pack after pack of high explosives into Russia to smuggle, because they should have drug smugglers, but they probably did. All these drones, all these big drone strikes that they did. They blown entire networks that have taken decades to put in place. Now blowing, gone. FSB rounded up deep cover spies who are there to do a real serious job, and that is to watch, that make sure that nobody starts World War III. Okay? And Russia's making a thrust for Lyman while they attack on the flanks. They've inched closer to Zvezk. A little bit of advance here in this, a little bit of advance north of Chevchyar, as parts, little bit of advance in the area around Chevchyar. The little forest area is now cut off between Chevchyar and Myemvia. The battle lines here have stabilised. That is basically straightened up as they line up artillery to hit Ukrainian positions. This is a fortress city with lots of trenches, lots of bunkers, lots of troop positions. The Russians have come up this road and attacked the outskirts from several directions, while they've made small advances here in the south. But the siege of Konsk is just continuing. The Russians have expanded their breakout here to cut off Konsk and take the pressure, to put more pressure on the Ukrainians to attack them from multiple directions. Small advances been made in the Pokrovsk area. A little bit of Ukrainians still left here and here, but Russia's made some small advances, but they all add up. Another town, although this actually town they took before and lost, but they were up to here and pushed back down to here. They're back up again. Small advances here, though. Initially, I thought they would thrust up through here to put pressure on. The Ukrainians, like I said, have moved in troops to hold the line, with artillery and rockets. But it's come at the expense of victories in other areas. The Russians have made advances, though for some reason, because there's fighting here, the map's been cut off. Ukraine does this to make it look like they've retaken territory, where in fact the Russians are fighting them, so, so be it. But again, Russia's pushing slowly west. So you have a third, and a third of 3 oblasts, and the Russians moving at a pace that could see this war end in 2 to 3 months if the Russians keep to their word. This is an old marker, but in the last couple of hours, drone launches, I was expecting a bit much heavier, but drone launches have been launched targeting electricity, and you may ask why, and that is because Ukraine isn't using radio, they're using fiber optic communications, and that's heavily power intensive, as you can imagine. Particularly drone, for some reason. Now, I don't know if this is anything related to the war or not, but they seem to be targeting refrigerated warehouses. And I know people are going to say, Dave, that's where they keep food. No, on the front line. You don't have refrigerated food and hot meal on the front line, but why I think they're destroying the power supply to morgues so that the soldiers have to smell their rotting comrades. It's a but it's only a theory. You've seen a soldier's meal pack? It looks like it was made in 18 in the 1800s. Look up a meal pack, okay? You know, your instant noodles. That's a luxury meal. Most of the Russians, they have to share a can of Borsk, okay? They do have a can, like, you know, they open a can every few hours. They get regular deliveries of cans. Most of the Ukrainian meals are your MREs. Basically, your powdered soup. Again, a luxury meal if it has croutons. Or a little bit of noodle. Now and again they get meat. Usually a can of Spam. And chocolate from the Red Cross. But that's about it. As you can see, the amount of red, Ukraine is losing its ability to marshal its forces with regular attacks on its truck parks, on its key supply lines, with the Russians slowly growing. The collapse, where it will come, who knows? You know, one of these two most likely. And then, 2 to 3 months. But again, I have been wrong and I have been right. I'm not wrong about everything and I'm right about everything. But it's, I was speculating before, and yeah, it's Lyman is a key target for the Russians. They are going to, by the looks of it, try to steamroll between these towns to cut these roads. That, again, if they're talking about deployment of 2 million troops, that's irrelevant right now. That is just to remind everybody that the Russians do have a bigger army than Europe, and that, it has been discussed before what to do. And NATO wants wants Hungary to be the sacrificial lamb. We'll get to that later. But there are 3 meetings, one of which is about Hungary, sacrificing Hungary, allowing Ukraine to basically invade and take over Hungary as a front line against the Russians if they get past the Kiev line. So you may or may not see it, but from Odessa all the way up to Kiev, there is a highway. This is actually the red line, which they said that would trigger a general war in Europe if Russia crosses it. But Russia says that they're only considered retaking Kiev if if it was the only way to end the war. But if it's a major escalation, which Putin hasn't admitted that he's backed off from that plan, but I think NATO, one of course is about the US purchase of weapons, that they're supposed to have come up with $7 billion. That's failed. France hasn't got the money, UK hasn't got the money, and Germany doesn't want to foot the bill alone. Other states don't want to kick in either. Sweden, the other meeting, is pretty unsure, but it's about the enhancement of European arms supplies, including the so-called drone wall, which we're talking about. Keir Starmer's already provided tens of thousands, and these drone walls just end up getting jammed and fall out of the sky. Ukraine is littered with drones from either side. Sometimes Ukraine having to shoot down their own drones because when the Russians jam them and they're circling and they basically pose a danger to them. Latvia is one of the Poland sort of cut allowances, but the Latvian government has gone a step further and completely cut off allowances for Ukrainian refugees. They made changes to the law on supporting Ukraine, reducing their aid budget by more than a third, slashing some benefits, as the country cannot afford the tens of millions to feed them. So that tells you how many Ukrainians are outside Ukraine, okay? Yeah. Some 4.3 million in the EU, according to some figures from Eurostat. Now, I say some figures from Eurostat because this number's gone up and down wildly. Okay? But some believe as many as half the population of Ukraine have left. Others say no. But, yeah. Definitely, I would believe that it could be 4 million in Europe, 1 million or so in Canada now, that they've got some in the US and other countries, and then the other half that have left have gone to Russia and other countries in the region. Not many, but I'm just saying, I think it's pretty clear. You know, Polish foreign minister saying we've got to bankroll Ukraine for at least 3 years. Heck, you can't even bankroll the French government for 3 months. Now, as I said, every accusation by a liberal is a confession. Ukraine has decided to strip the mayor of Odessa for citizenships over just the mere claims that he has a Russian passport. Now, Volodymyr Zelensky has removed a popular figure and installed military rule in the Black Sea port after it came out that the mayor is an ethnic Russian. He's been there since 2014. He opposed the government's plan to dismantle the monuments, particularly the fact that Odessa was founded by Russia. Zelensky has stripped many prominent political figures of citizenship in order to facilitate his own rule. He wants to remove any and all challenges because he wants to rule Ukraine. He wants to be the military governor of Ukraine in the post-war years because, you know, he's going to do the same thing the Americans did after the war, and that is announce that it's too soon for democratic elections. We need to focus on rebuilding, i.e. we're going to install our puppets first. Zelensky's preempted that and getting rid of anybody who's going to be opposed to him and his ethnic cleansing program. But as I said, Russia's made significant advances yesterday, more advances today. It may be a small town, but each town Ukraine loses is accompanied by the loss of manpower and strategic advantage. It's not fantasy, folks. They are planning a contingency for the fall of Ukraine to invade Hungary. This is taken from Polish news. Hungarian news, sorry. Hungary news. Yeah. Just gives an insight into their internal politics. Yeah. They're extremist. made threats against Hungary. Can be also seen in Copenhagen that they too want to trigger. This is all part of the plan to trigger World War III. Engage in your typical smear campaign. Dehumanize Hungary. All right. The eastern flank is collapsing in Kupiansk. All right. Konsk is close to falling. If they want to hold on to Konsk, and they'll lose They'll lose. They've got 3 cities, but they can't defend all 3, so they have to pick one to lose. And each time, and they're just losing more and more. Eventually, there'll just be Konsk and Lyman will all be surrounded. The Russian cauldron doesn't put a lid on it unless they want to completely destroy it. But with Kupiansk fallen, so what they're doing is setting up planting the idea in your head that they'll constantly dehumanize Hungary. Start pushing all the refugees from Ukraine into Hungary, and then Ukraine will announce government in exile. The Ukrainian bulk of the Ukrainian army will fight a fighting retreat, and the Russians will go, wait a minute, we're not winning this good. What's going on here? And the hope is that Russia will fall for this trick and basically move in very quickly and race to Kiev or something stupid like that. But I don't think Putin will race in. I think he'll see that the roads are going to be mined, the cities are going to be rigged to explode. They'll go off anyway, right? And they'll blame the Russians anyway. But Ukraine is preparing, right, a massive missile campaign, massive drones, massive missiles into Russia, retreat into Hungary, and hopefully the Russians will fall for it, trigger whatever bullshit article of the articles of suggestions, because they're not laws in Europe, they're only suggestions. And they will try and trigger the Americans to come in to Ukraine to prop them up, to stop the deliberate mass collapse of the Ukrainian front lines in order to lure Russia into central Ukraine so they can be hit with a devastating wave of Tomahawk missiles. And then along the way, of course, the Hungarians will be destroyed. The Europeans will no longer have that pesky Orban blocking their fascist Orwellian takeover. Zelensky will be appointed Captain Sky Shield. Ukraine will be under a military governorship for 20, 30, maybe 50 years to rebuild. There'll be phony elections like they did in World War II. Although they're not the only ones who had phony elections. But overall, most of the world is worried, rightfully so, that Europe is deliberately walking into war. But France is look at this. France is sending weapons and air defense systems to Ukraine. That's a 155 Caesar. But the thing is, as fast as they send them, they're losing them. This FAD air defense and FA-18s have been now considered to accompany the F-16s. We see javelins being prepared, but most of them don't make it. Okay, they get sent to the front lines. Japanese and everybody's sending weapon systems. You know, you got drones. You got Poland sending 122 millimeters. You got the American air defense. You've got all sorts of guns and artillery, right? You pretty much got different mobile tracked artillery pieces being tested since 2024. These have been these are lighter versions of the one. These are light artillery, not big ones like this, but they're putting anything and everything onto the back of a Humvee or a truck or a tank chassis. Weapons of every caliber, every rocket they can come up with, all going to Ukraine. Every drone they can think of. There you go. See the assortment from, cut down Kalashnikovs, Chinese knockoffs, British battle rifles, World War II. They're from World War II, folks. They're MP-40s, German machine guns. You've got recoilless rifles from Eastern Bloc. You've got American 30 cals. You got 50 cals. You got everything. You also, what's not there is the good old Mark 19 grenade launcher, Vietnam era, but still reliable with modernised grenades. Ukraine's new weapon! And it's a dud. Of course, everything. Dragon's teeth, barbed wire, razor wire, to even digging moats, okay? This is 50 cal sniping. This is actually not new. Since World War II, they've been doing it. It's called 50 cal sniping. You get a 50 cal, right, mounted. You see the big, it's actually up on a Jeep. It's got a big back of a Jeep. And they put a big old hydraulic arm. Put a big old scope on it. They look for a troop position like 2 miles away, and they pepper it with usually what they're doing though in Ukraine is trying to spot drones before they're launched, and they pepper the positions as they're launched. And of course, you've got UK short and medium, short range air defense. Again, optical guided. Heck, you got. See, look how big that's the Caesar. Look how big she is. It's not as big as the American, but still, it's cheap. But France is cheap, and France is losing money on everything, But at the end of the day, it's Ukraine calling for evacuations. It's Ukraine losing territory, and it's Ukraine now having to decide if they're going to lose Lyman, Konsk, or Prima, or this. What are they going to lose next? How much more will it take? And again, the peace deal on the table. Give up this. You can keep this and this. But every time Russia advances, they adjust the peace deal and say, well, this town's now off the map. This town is now off. They're actually marking off day by day every town they take and saying to Ukraine, well, we freeze the lines here, but this Donetsk is the sticking point because, well, actually, all this is the sticking point, but it's particularly Donetsk, okay? Ukraine wants Donetsk because Donetsk and this corridor gives them oil revenue because they've sold all this, okay? The oil revenue from this little slither here at the Black Sea goes to Mobil. They sold it to pay their debts, and then they went back into debt, and now they're even deeper in debt than they are before. Their debt is growing about $7 billion a month. France is trying to plug that hole right now, and it is failing. The French economy hasn't got €7, let alone $7 billion. And France is talking about the same disaster that caused the French economy to collapse twice before, and that is the issuance of debt bonds. France doesn't have any revenue to cover those debt bonds. Debt bubbles have destroyed Europe and, well, America to some extent twice before, though the Great Depression was deliberate, but most financial disasters are man-made. They just dig a hole instead of cutting everything back to the minimum and telling people, but because people don't want to take care of themselves, they want a free, easy ride. And Ukraine is that sore hole that needs to be plugged and dealt with once and for all, and told no more. It's a Band-Aid. Rip it off. It's going to stink. It's going to hurt. It'll fester. But now, once open to the sunlight, the parasites, the infection will go away. And then it's a matter of, okay, we now start demilitarization. We now start neutralization. Return to neutrality. Ukraine, return to neutrality. A huge DMZ. Put in some, put the army into policing the state. Start cleaning up the Ukrainian government. And I think Russia would appreciate the fact not having to foot the bill for Ukraine. And eventually, we can actually see Russia and Europe actually get along. It's the Russophobes, in part also the greedy who want to get their hands on other countries' resources instead of making deals, and always wanting more is the problem. And until the greedy, it's not just greedy Europeans, it's the greedy World Economic Forum, most of whom are not even Europeans or in Europe. They're just using Europe as their proxy. So thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and please support the channel. You can support me on Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree, which you'll find in the description below, in my profile, or scan the QR code on the screen. I appreciate each and every one of you. See you in the next video, and bye for now.